Good evening and welcome. You're watching ET Now. The show is Startup Central, the first and only daily show in India dedicated to startups and entrepreneurship. I'm Ruchi Bhatia, and over the next 20 minutes, we will be touching upon some very important stories from the startup world. So let's quickly get started. Remember, it was on Friday that we had heard that the Karnataka government had banned Ola in Bengaluru, and now that 6-month ban on Ola in Karnataka will be lifted today, and this after the company pays a hefty penalty to the state transport department. Remember, it was under fire for flouting the local transport rules, and a massive penalty of almost 15 lakh rupees is to be paid by Ola. To discuss more on that story, I'm joined by Harminder Sani, the founder of Wazir Advisors, who's joining us on the phone line. Harminder, good evening. Thanks for speaking to us. My first question to you, how are you reading into the current situation, a harsh 6-month ban and then a penalty of 15 lakh rupees? Clearly, it seems like there is a gap that we are seeing with respect to innovation, with respect to regulation and policies, and what needs to be done in a bid to boost the startup industry.
Good evening, Ruchi. So, see, first thing, very clearly, I'm happy that this ban, even though fine has been imposed, but the ban has been revoked, because it's not only about Ola, it's about those thousands of people who are driving for Ola and the millions of customers who would have gotten impacted, because it's not that whether Ola is there or not there, life will go on. A lot of people are depending on it, whether for their livelihood or whether for commuting. So I think that's a good news, and there I would say that it's compliment to all people involved at how they sorted it out very quickly before it became a major issue. Else it would have become a major issue. So that's one part. In terms of the gap between the policy and the startup world and all those things, if we have to really look at that, I think it's clearly the way things are changing in the overall economics today, and more so because of the digital transformation which is going on. We not only are seeing this gap today, we have been seeing it for last many years, and I'm not very sure that whether the gap will completely be mashed up in these matters soon enough, because I think whatever changes we have seen, transformation we have seen coming in, I think we'll see much more of that in the coming years. Good thing is, as long as the government and the bureaucracy, they are prompt and they are listening to the stakeholders and they are responding in a way that the disruption is not really high and disturbing the whole ecosystem. So I think we should be all right with that, because otherwise, yes, let's say we have seen in our own country the things which have been banned for, or something which have been imposed on a stay for a very, very long time, and at the end of it, everybody.
You know, but Harminder, this crackdown has come in after the Karnataka Transport Department had asked Ola, to not go ahead with their bike taxis, and several warnings were also issued. They did not pay heed to it. So do you believe that somewhere down the line, there is a catch-up that has to be played between the government as well as these companies in terms of their policies, in terms of how interaction happens on a regular basis, so that neither the companies flout rules and neither, on the other hand, the government has to go ahead and take such an extreme step?
So that part, if I were to say as a citizen, if I have to look at it, that any law which the have decided already, they are not old school traditional industrial houses or conglomerates or people who will do anything to grow their business. They don't follow. So it's a new age economy, and these people should be abiding by the laws. So I'm if you really ask me, not really with Ola and any of the startups on that, where they say that this law is not as we want it and it still should be negotiated and it should be debated. In the meanwhile, we'll flout it. No, I don't think that's the way to do business, at least of it coming from the startup world. So I think they can plead their case, they can argue, give their argument, and try to change it. But I don't.
Right. Harminder, I think we've got you on a bad line, but if you can hear me for the last question, do you believe this actually triggers a larger debate as well for the need for Harminder, I thought we got you on a bad line, but just continue the point that you were making, and the larger debate, of course, of the need for clarity around regulations, which we are seeing, wherein there is a huge gap at this point of time.
See, in terms of clarity, there are certain things which one can say that, yes, there is a matter of interpretation. One can live with that. But in this case, if somebody has been told not to offer certain services and not to launch certain services, they still go ahead and launch it, I don't think it's a matter of interpretation. It's a matter of simple flouting the law. And that's what I was reacting to, saying that the new age economy and the startups, they should actually not be doing anything like this, because we are building businesses for the future. We are building business for new India and new way of doing business. So in that case, they should not be flouting it. They can always go back, debate, discuss. And I find most of the governments at the state and the center level these days very proactive to listen to the stakeholders. But the flouting of law is certainly not something which I will support. But yes, there are laws which continue, and laws are always evolving. And one has to discuss, debate, do all of that. But
Harminder,
not to flout it.
Absolutely, Harminder. In this case, would you say that the fault was from Ola's end, because they were not the ones who were complying with the rules and regulations which were laid out by the government quite clearly? And clearly here, in this case, it is Ola that is at fault.
Absolutely. On the basis of the public information which is available, I would say that they have been at fault. And while 15 lakh may look like a very high amount as a penalty in India, but penalties are generally very low. So 15 lakh is significant from that point of view. But I think they have 6 months ban versus 15 lakhs. I think they really have been given a very soft pat that way. Very soft pat.
And Harminder, if I could get you on the last question, you know, the larger debate surrounding urban transport and the lack of it, and how huge the gap is, and which is why perhaps companies like Ola have to innovate, you know, despite the government kind of not going ahead and giving clearances and all. I mean, you know, if you can touch upon the wider issue of urban transport, the kind of gaps that there are, and the fact that there is a need for innovation, and which is why companies like Ola were really taking a leap.
Yeah, so they are taking the lead, but since you asked, it's a larger question on urban transport, and there my view is that while people like Ola, companies like Ola and Uber, they are providing innovative solution as a private company will, and they are following certain other companies' model, and it's working, which is to provide an individual a comfortable ride, but on an individualistic basis. But if you really look at the larger urban transportation matter, I think it has to be a mass transportation systems which will have to take the load, while Ola and Uber are taking in a completely different direction. So while the world is debating that why there should be we should be putting more cars on the roads, these people are actually putting more cars on the road. So on the larger question, if you really ask me, the innovation has to come from the government on the mass transit and mass commuter side. But because this is not going to solve the problem, it's only adding to the problem. Just see the days when either Ola or Uber in any cities, Bombay, Bangalore, Delhi, they go on strike, how the traffic improves. I'm sure there are people who are suffering because Ola, Ubers are not on the road. But in general, the traffic suddenly, because this one single factor, these cabs going off, changes the traffic scenario completely for that day. So it's not a solution. And I don't think this is the right solution where every individual who can afford to pay $70 and will get into a car alone with a driver and go home, which is just 3 kilometers away. It's not the answer. But yes, right now, because mass commuting systems and mass transportation systems are completely either missing or they are very, very negligible in terms of what they are serving. So yes, this is the solution. But on a larger question, I don't think this is the answer for urban transportation at all.
All right, Harminder, many thanks for taking your time out and speaking to us on that issue. There's a problem from both ends, the regulatory, the policy flip-flop that we are seeing from the government's end, and on the other hand, Ola, despite several warnings coming in, they not paying heed, and which is why that massive 15 lakh fine coming in for Ola. We shift focus then on to another important story for the startup industry. And India's got another unicorn e-commerce logistics startup. Delivery has raised $400 million from the likes of SoftBank, Vision Fund and other investors, leading the valuation to a massive $1.5 billion. This is, of course, a huge valuation. The company will now look to focus on scaling their warehouses, freight operations, apart from building large fulfillment centers. My colleague Rahul Dayama is joining in live from Bengaluru with more details. Rahul, another one joining the Unicorn Club. How is Delivery looking to use this money for scaling up their operations?
Ruchi, that's right. And also, it is an interesting startup, probably the first logistics startup that has entered the coveted Unicorn Club. Before I discuss about the big focus areas for them and where the investments will go, we are talking about 400 million plus of it really. But another big indicator is the fact that SoftBank Vision Fund is back in the game. And how? This is the third largest funding that they have pumped in, apart from Grofers and First Cry as well recently over the last 3-4 months that they have. So clear indicator that SoftBank is back to investing, because remember, the big concern was a lot of investors were not willing to place larger bets, something that SoftBank is clearly well known to do. Usually start off by investing 100 million plus into a startup and then really take that control. Here also they will own about 23% of the stake in the company. So yes, good news that the big funding checks are being written off right now. They would, as you indicated, will focus on scaling their warehouse, adding a lot more fulfillment centers, and also scale the reach of pin codes to 20,000 from the current 15,000 that they operate. Remember, they do count Flipkart and Paytm Mall as their clients. So e-commerce is one part of the logistic business, but they have a whole ambit of other services that they offer. And the Unicorn Club itself, for it to have made it, is sort of a validation that there is a larger market out there. So we have an interesting blend of startups in the top 10 companies as far as Indian startups are concerned, from the likes of e-commerce players like Flipkart, Paytm Mall. You have, of course, Ola, you have Oyo, you have Swiggy and Zomato, both food tech players. So interesting blend of startups, now part of the coveted Unicorn Club here in India.
All right, Rahul, many thanks for getting in all those details. And for all you Apple fans out there, today is going to be an important day to watch out. Apple will be hosting its special event at the Steve Jobs Theater in California. It's not gadgets this time, but services that Apple lovers and consumers will look forward to on their devices. To talk more on that, joining me on the phone line is Jaipal Singh. He's Associate Research Manager, Client Services at IDC. Jaipal, good evening. Thanks for speaking to us at ET Now. What are you keenly looking forward to in this event? The video subscription plan seems to be the most awaited one. Apple has invested a massive $1 billion into the making of new content and streaming services that is set to compete with the likes of Amazon, Netflix, Hulu. What's your own sense? What is it that would make Apple really stand out?
Good evening. To start with, I think it makes perfect sense right now to talk about all these services. From the Apple perspective, I see two different stages as of now. One from the devices side, if you see the overall trend in the devices market. The devices market has somehow stagnated in the last 1 or 2 years. We are seeing a hardly, single-digit growth in the global market. In that perspective, it makes more sense for any device vendor to change their shift somewhere on the services side, so that they can hold their users on their ecosystem. The another perspective, which is more important here, from the Apple side, they claim that they have 1.4 billion active users on their platform. But holding them has become a difficult task for Apple from last 1 or 2 years, especially because from the China-based vendors who are bringing more affordable devices and quickly innovating most of the innovation from the world and bringing them across the market at a very aggressive pace. So that has actually given a tough competition to Apple in the last few years. In that side, I think it makes sense to Apple to differentiate from the services side, and especially when we talk about a market like streaming, which is a hot buzz right now, and not only markets like USA and in China, where we have already seen a clear shift. The other markets like India also, there is a clear shift in terms of consumption, which is happening in that perspective. So in that perspective, I personally believe mobility is a new feature or new add-on services that everybody is targeting as of now. People have changed their habits. They consume a lot of content while on the go. And vendors like Apple, which is quite present, sort of 5 inch to somewhere, in 14 to 15 inch, where most of the consumption is happening. So in that perspective, I'm looking at it very positively, and I think it's the right direction where Apple is going right now.
Jaipal, you did talk about how Apple sales for iPhones have been declining over the years. But how late do you think are they to join the entire services market? I mean, look at the competition that is already existing in this space with the likes of Netflix, Amazon Prime and many others. And how important do you think will be the cost factor which drives big markets like India?
Well, I will say they are on the right path as of now. Definitely, they are the late entered in this segment. Rivals like Netflix, Amazon has already taken a long road here. But nevertheless, they are entering this segment at the right time because most of the emerging market, they are getting data ready. The data is quite affordable in some of the emerging markets now. And more and more people are shifting on the digital platform from their traditional systems. So in that perspective, when I link their overall growth to the services, I think it's the right time for the world to move their services on the digital platform. And Apple, as one of the strong players, they can differentiate the way they hold their users on their platform. Their users are quite loyal. They definitely want to hold on the Apple ecosystem. But the only problem so far was that there's no overall ecosystem. When I say from the streaming side, when I say from the news side, or especially another trend which is quite popular these days, in the gaming services. Are you providing the right content for your users? That is the next question that everybody is going to ask. And in that perspective, I believe it is not that late for Apple to start from here. It is not that late for Apple.
So, Jaipal, do you think that, this is actually going to be Apple's reinvention into a services company, so to say?
I will say otherwise. Actually, they are already doing good in the services. If you see the services revenue from last quarters, every quarter we are seeing a significant jump in their services business. Yes, this is definitely a turnover from here, because the video streaming market was quite fragmented and most of users were struggling to, how to keep a track of all the subscription, and because they have to keep multiple subscriptions, that's still a pain point. And when I see Apple as a vendor coming in this platform, they might solve this, the key problem in this segment. So in that perspective, I think this is a reinvent for Apple from the services perspective.
Jaipal, before I let you go, what do you think is going to be the key challenge for Tim Cook? I mean, he took over the company after Steve Jobs died in 2011. But where from here in terms of where things are headed for Apple, this whole foray into services, what would be the key challenge in your view for Tim Cook?
The biggest challenge, as I see, is to hold the active user base what they have on their ecosystem. Okay, they are definitely one of a big leader when it comes to devices vendor. They are slowly growing in the services system also. But the problem is like how to hold those users on their platform. When I see vendors like Huawei, when I see vendors like Oppo and Vivo, they have recently gained a lot of traction in the China and other emerging markets, and they have already taken a lot of share from Apple in these markets. And this is also holding Apple to grow further in their international expansion. So in that perspective, when Apple want to retain their existing users and also want to enter into some of the emerging market, that will be next, phase of growth where Apple should target also. And in that perspective, I see it's a challenge also because it will be not so easy for Apple this time. And especially, in 1920, the market will be moving in a different direction in terms of devices side. More and more people are, integrating their apps and the services ecosystem on their platform. So here Apple needs to look out from a different way.
All right, a tougher market indeed is, 2019 and 2020. So clearly Apple has to chalk out their strategy very carefully. Jaipal, many thanks for speaking to us on that issue. And remember, we will be keeping you abreast of all the developments from that all-important Apple event only on ET Now. But before we wrap up, electric bikes and scooters are the newest offerings on Uber and will come to select international markets very soon. My colleague Rahul Dayama actually decided to take an electric bike and scooter for a spin and decode what's on offer. Take a look.
This really is the newest offering by Uber, at least here in the States. To sort of give you a sense of how this works, I've sort of taken it for a spin and will give you a sense of how this really works. So if you really look at it, this has come in from the partnership of Jump that they have had. So a closer look would sort of give you a sense. While it's a bicycle feel that you get, that's not it. There's really a battery also behind it that sort of boosts up when you go by. So you will see, the space in the front for you to sort of place your bags or anything that you're carrying. There's a battery here, a replaceable one, that Uber really gets a message that this is below 50% and needs a charge. Here on the front, you have details as far as the charging point is concerned. Very interesting and useful is the phone can also be mounted here. You could use it to not only listen to music but also navigate. The gear system is something that sort of caught my fancy, because you have 3 gears, and if you're sort of aligning it accordingly, as in when you pedal, you see the boost also is something that you would feel. So they have a rotating gear depending on the speed that you would really want this to rotate. The seat is really adjustable. So basically, it's a nice experience. Uber is telling us that a lot of users here in the States at least are using this for smaller rides, about 5 to 10 miles really. That's less than 20 kilometers. But on a full charge, this would give you about 30 to 40 miles. In kilometers, that would be 48 to about 65 kilometers, which is not a bad thing. The big challenge really for Uber will be the regulatory hurdles that they'll have to battle, because even here in the States, there are a few cities that allow specific lanes for these bikes and scooters, but that's something that Uber will have to figure out. But largely, if you look at it, the offering has come in just about 6 months back. The response here in the States has been good. They are looking at international markets. India is potentially one of them, for them to see how this bet really plays off. All in all, not a bad option, really easier on the wallet too. The rides are cheaper compared to your Uber X and Pool. So that's something that has caught my fancy. Definitely would rate this big bet by Uber quite well. I'm here at Santa Monica in California to understand the big, bold bets of Uber and what really will come out as the offering as we go ahead. Remember, Uber has really changed the way we commute from A to B with Uber Go, Pool also. But going ahead, it's been a few months that they've launched the electric scooters, so to say, in USA. It's live in a few cities, and this is how it feels like. Of course, in the United States, it's easier to go about. These are typically better for small distances to be covered, about 5 to 10 kilometers, and work quite well. So if I could have my Mojo expert, Mahesh Katkam, sort of pan by, this is really the battery and could be charged like a plug-in, plug-play. So this is the external battery, while there is an internal battery on the front. So to accelerate, once you sort of have the grip going and accelerate it, here is when you can accelerate and you have the brake on the other side. So very simple in those terms. Takes you a while to sort of get a hang of it if you haven't really been on this sort of a scooter before, but it's quite effortless in a way that it really works. To give you a sense of how to really unlock this, once you really are on the Uber app and you sort of get to select Go, it gives you a sense of which is really the closest scooter to you, and once you sort of unlock it with the QR code, it gets unlocked and you could take by and then stop it once you're sort of done. So very effortless in the way. Of course, it's difficult to sort of carry luggage if you're thinking to otherwise, but this really is one of the big bets as far as Uber has been betting on. They're looking to also launch this in several countries as we talk by. But as far as the big takeaway for now has been, even in a country like the United States, several cities that we're talking about, they are facing some issues as far as vandalism concerns are concerned. Also, people are known to sort of put the bikes, the scooters elsewhere and sort of dump it. So A lot of drivers, we understand, are not taking it well with this, but with dedicated lanes in a city like this, in LA, in Santa Monica, as you can see, there are wide lanes, some of them really dedicated to scooters. So that really helps the cause for someone who's sort of looking to scooter by. So it's an electric one, powered, and this really is a partnership with Jump that they sort of acquired last year. That's